Welcome to the Better Behavior Show with Dr. Nicole Beurkens, best-selling author, psychologist, nutritionist, and mom, where we'll be discussing ways to improve your child's attention, anxiety, mood, and behavior with simple strategies you can use right now. The following discussion is for educational purposes only and not intended to diagnose or treat any disorder. Please do not apply any of this information without first speaking with your doctor. Now, let's head to the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Nicole, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about a variety of really important health-related topics, including things like the gut microbiome, gut health, and precision medicine. Our gut health is so connected to our overall health and in particular brain health and function, and that's why I often cover topics related to that on the show. Last month, I had the opportunity to meet today's guest, Dr. Marvin Singh, at a conference we were both attending. I was really impressed with the story of his personal health journey and how he's used that to impact the work that he's doing with patients as a physician. And I knew that I wanted to have him on the show, and I'm so glad he agreed to come on today. Let me tell you a bit about him. Dr. Marvin Singh is an integrative gastroenterologist in San Diego, California, and a member of the Board and Diplomate of the American Board of Integrative Medicine. He's also trained and board certified in internal medicine and gastroenterology hepatology. A graduate of Virginia Commonwealth University School of Medicine, Dr. Singh completed his residency training in internal medicine at the University of Michigan Health System, here sort of local to me, followed by fellowship training in gastroenterology at Scripps Clinic, Torrey Pines. He was trained by Andrew Weil, MD, a pioneer in the field of integrative medicine at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. He's currently a voluntary assistant clinical professor at UCSD in the Department of Family Medicine and Public Health. Prior to this, he was a clinical assistant professor at UCLA and an assistant professor of medicine at Johns Hopkins University. Dr. Singh is a member of the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and many other societies. He's actively involved in the American Gastroenterological Association, and he's one of the editors of the textbook of Integrative Gastroenterology, second edition. I believe that is a new edition that just came out, and has written several book chapters and articles. He's dedicated to guiding his clients toward optimal wellness every step of the way, using the most cutting-edge technologies to design highly personalized, precision-based protocols and to help them stay on top of their health rather than underneath disease. Towards this end, he founded Precisione Clinic to bring the best in preventive medicine to his clients. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Dr. Singh. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. What an introduction.
You've done a lot, which is great. And, there's so much is out there now about, dealing with our gut and gut health and how that relates to health. And, almost sometimes people can feel like there's so much information, they don't know where to start with things. And so one of the things I know that we're going to talk about today is some basics or some really foundational things that families can do. But I'm curious to have you start with talking a bit about your journey, because while, in your bio, I read all the amazing things you've done in medicine and in your training for that, there's a pretty important part of your personal story and your personal journey towards health that weaves into that too. And I'd love to have you talk with us about that.
Yeah. I started practicing gastroenterology after I finished my fellowship, and as I was, working in my first job, I kind of felt that there was something missing from how we take care of people. We were real good at taking care of people when they're sick and they're in the hospital, on death's door, but those aren't the majority of people that are walking around the streets. Most of the people are, just like you and me, regular people that aren't like deathly ill in the hospital. And I wasn't really sure what to do. And I reached a point where, a year or two later, I kind of felt that maybe I just wasn't doing it right. Maybe there was something missing from what I was doing. And I reached out to one of my colleagues at Johns Hopkins, where I worked for the first time as an assistant professor. And he mentored me and encouraged me to learn about integrative medicine. And so I, hesitatingly, did, because I was very traditionally trained. Michigan's a pretty traditional conservative hospital, mm-hmm. Very good training, but now they actually have an integrative medicine program, actually. But not back when I was doing residency, I don't believe. And, so I enrolled in Andrew Weil's program at the University of Arizona, while I was actively practicing. So I was being a student again while I'm actually working full-time job. So that was another challenge. But, when I went for the first week, in person to Arizona, and I was meditating, I was doing yoga at sunrise, all the Tai Chi, Qigong, all these things that I thought that this is not for me. I'm never going to do this stuff. In the morning, refreshed and totally reinvigorated. And I learned so much about nutrition just in like the few days that I was there, that I didn't even know or understand or appreciate. Was overweight, learning more and more and more and more, and it made me really a believer. So that's kind of my story. And I really took that to heart and really kind of built on that and learned more and more and more on my own, and started writing more and reading more, and just kind of brought me to where I am today.
Mm-hmm. And I think that it's such a powerful story about how you were a bit skeptical at first, but implemented these things in your own life and saw the change, and then thought, I need to bring this to my patients, and really to patients that you felt like you hadn't necessarily been reaching, before with the more chronic kinds of things, as you said. And I always feel like when we are implementing things in our own lives and we can be a model of that, it makes it that much more powerful, right? I mean, sometimes people feel like as doctors, as practitioners, we're just there to tell them what to do, but are we really doing it ourselves? And that's what I love about your story. It's like, no, I saw the difference for myself, which I think makes it that much more powerful.
Yeah. And I learned that there's so many different components. You can't just say I'm going to eat differently and that's going to be it. I mean, nutrition and diet is a huge component of it. But interestingly, what kind of accelerated my weight loss and my journey was mindfulness, meditation.
Yeah.
The stress really must have played a large role. Mm-hmm. And so, sometimes you can tell, when there's something holding you back from progress, despite your, good intentions, you're going to be held back. So it's a multi-pronged approach, really.
Well, and I think that's a really important point too, because I see a lot of kids and families at the clinic who have done a lot of things right as far as changing, maybe their child's diet or even their family's diet, looking at things like specific gut protocols, supplements, things like that. But the stress level in the home, the stress level of the family, the stress level for the child is huge. And I have long felt like that can really sabotage progress. And what you're saying is that really can be the case.
Yeah, going on a vacation and having fun as a family might be just as good as doing a 10-day diet.
Right. Right. I want to, a little bit later, I want to get into some specific recommendations that you have for people around, stress reduction and things like that. But so fast forward to today and the work that you're doing with people. You really focus a lot on this idea of optimizing health and wellness, of not waiting until there is an acute or major serious problem, but really taking the reins and taking control of that at the current time. Can you talk a bit about what are some of the main ways that you help people optimize that?
Yeah, it's so much easier and better for you for the long run to understand what's going on inside your body and understand what your risks are for certain things and make an intervention on that before it becomes a major problem. We don't want to wait until we have lupus. We want to know that there's inflammation and maybe some early signs of autoimmunity going on before you have a problem, not at the time you have the problem. Because the majority of the problems that we have are chronic diseases. And so these are the things that are just kind of, we don't really know what causes it. It's a chronic condition. These are the medicines you have to take probably for the rest of your life. That's what a lot of the things are. And, diabetes and heart disease and all these Alzheimer's, all these things are also chronic diseases because they come from a place where the inflammation and the changes that are occurring in whatever organ system we're talking about have been going on for a while. Mm-hmm. And so what I like to do is try to learn about as much of the information about somebody as I can as possible, looking at toxin exposures, looking at the microbiome, looking at what the microbiome is doing, looking at the genomics, looking at your DNA. I even use whole body imaging. I've been utilizing Health Nucleus in La Jolla for whole body imaging and genomics, and putting that together with the whole picture and talking to the person, learning about what their stressors are and what's going on in their family and their friends and their dynamics, and looking at certain cardiometabolic markers and just a whole wide variety of different things. And I take all that information together, and I literally spend like a day, in front of my computer looking at all this stuff and trying to build correlations and patterns and trying to help guide somebody as far as, this is how you should eat. This is what you should do to kind of clean up your environment. These are the risks that you might have, and these are the things that we should do about it. And then we have a place where we can kind of follow that along the way, so we know, what progress you're making and are you on the right track? Because, it's a very kind of generic statement to say, but I say, if you don't know, you don't know. So if you don't really know that you might have a problem, then you're not going to know. So using some of these things, if we identify, for example, a 3 millimeter tumor in your lung, even if you're a non-smoker, people can get lung cancer, for example. So, if we identify a 3 millimeter tumor, and when it's very small and you're asymptomatic, it's much better, if you think about it, to remove it at that time than waiting until you start, coughing and losing weight, maybe 5, 6, who knows how many years down the line. And then when it's discovered eventually, because diagnosing these things are not necessarily the easiest to do, they're not the quickest way to diagnose, then you have other problems. You have to deal with other kinds of treatments that have other impacts on your life.
Mm-hmm. So really it's about the two things that stand out to me as you're talking about that are that it's individualized,
very
focused on this individual person. And it's also very proactive, looking at really what can we do to strengthen a person? What can we do to help them in a full body way before they start to have lots of problems, or maybe if they do currently have problems, before those get worse or, take on other kinds of things. So I think that's really important, and really the way that healthcare needs to go. I feel like we've been in such a reactive mindset for so long with how, medicine is, and you're really on the forefront of saying, no, actually we can start to, address these things before they become issues.
They say that there's a statistic that I saw that was pretty shocking lately, that it's a third of people that live to age 50 won't make it to age 75. And so that really hits the whole point home. It's because these things kind of brew for years and years, and these are the things that actually cause us to pass away before we, expect or want to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, one of the big concerns that a lot of parents have when they have a child, particularly with a more significant disability, whether that be more significant autism or, cognitive impairment, those kinds of things, is that they are the primary caretakers for their child, and what's going to happen to their child if they get sick and are unable to care for them, or, what's going to happen to their child when they pass away. And one of the things I focus on with parents is how to keep themselves as healthy as possible, physically healthy, mentally healthy, so that they can, be there as long as possible for their child. And that really struck me as you were saying that, that's a big fear that so many of these parents have, and speaks to how, yes, we're busy taking care of our children, and particularly if you have a child with significant disability, but you also need to prioritize taking care of yourself.
Yeah, healthy parent equals healthy kid, and also, implementing these recommendations, trying to use a lot of lifestyle-based approaches, learning and understanding good habits. These are also good for the kids, because the kids are going to see you do this stuff You're going to learn it just by observation, because kids are very,
Mm-hmm.
observing beings. And if they see you doing something bad, they're going to think that that's okay. They see you doing something good, they're going to think that's okay.
Right.
So if they see you eating, broccoli instead of French fries, then they're going to think broccoli is what you're supposed to eat.
That's right. That modeling is so powerful, so powerful. So you mentioned a few minutes ago when you were talking about some of the things that you look at with patients, you mentioned gut microbiome, gut health. Let's dive into that a bit, because certainly many of the kids, the young adults that have developmental and mental health issues, whether they realize it or not, have underlying gut health kinds of issues that are perpetuating those problems. So for you, how important do you think gut health is to overall health, and particularly to brain health and function?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, and it's so individualized too, because every person is only 10 to 20% similar in their microbiome in the gut.
Mm.
And, these microbes, it's not just bacteria, they're viruses, they're fungi, there's all kinds of little guys in there.
Mm-hmm.
And, they take the food, they take whatever they're exposed to, and they process these things. And as a result, you get what we call metabolites that are produced. And this is all this metabolome stuff. If you've heard this word metabolome or metabolites. Metabolites are just, you can think of them as like chemicals that are produced as a result of something breakdown or processing of some, food or chemical or what have you. And these are the things that actually influence our health and how we think, how we feel, our emotions, how we react. 95% of serotonin is stored in the gut. So that's actually a good classic example. We all talk about it. Things like GABA and all these neurotransmitters are also produced and stored in the gut. And so, you could easily see that when you eat something in particular, maybe you get a little bit of a certain kind of feeling, or a couple hours later, you have a certain kind of feeling, whether it's a good feeling or a bad feeling. And it could largely be related to the food itself, but also what happens when the food enters the system. Mm-hmm. Because it's just like, you put a piece of something into a system, and then you see what happens, what reactions happen as a result. And if you're continuing to put all these things that are not good in the system, that have chemicals and additives and food dye and colorings and all these other kind of things, then, the body has to process it. And so when it processes it, it breaks down into certain other things, and those certain other things can impact you, and they can go to the brain, they can go wherever. And that's how it kind of affects you. And there's so many different microbes, and they shift and they change, and their functions may also shift and also change. And so it's a very, very interesting, very dynamic system that we have. The microbiome is very dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what's there's sort of two different categories that I see with people. Sometimes patients will come in and they're having brain-based symptoms. Maybe it's a child who's incredibly hyperactive, inattentive, struggling to manage their emotions and behaviors, or sometimes it's a child with, learning problems, low energy, those kinds of things. But, there are two categories. One category is the kids who also are clearly having GI issues, right? Clearly having things like constipation or, low appetite or irritable bowel or those kinds of things. And for those families, I think it's a bit of an easier sell to have them understand that there's a connection between what's going on in the gut and the brain. But then we have this other category where the kids aren't having overt GI symptoms. And so it's a lot easier, I think, to go, I don't think food or the microbiome has anything to do with that. Do you find that too with patients?
Yeah. But it's where I always just tell them, just try and see what happens, because you'll be surprised, just taking gluten away or removing dairy, simple things like that could make a huge difference. Or making sure that you eat organic and not eating things that have food dyes in them. Because, like, for example, I'm talking about food dye and food colorings, because that's a classic one, especially for kids, because it's a neurotoxin. I mean, it just messes up your brain. So whether you're an
Mhm.
adult or a kid, but kids may be more particularly vulnerable to it because they're growing and changing and developing. And so they may not have as resilient of a whole system as, an adult might. And the
Mhm.
early days of being a kid are also very vulnerable, even for the gut microbiome. So things can be influenced a lot. I mean, the microbiome of an adult is really kind of forged by the age 2.5, 2.5
Mhm.
years old. And so that early first couple years is very important because that can kind of set the stage for what the rest of the life is going to be like. And so early exposures, diet, stress in the home, sleep habits, all of these things, they all factor in.
Mhm. A lot of times when people think about the microbiome, their mind immediately goes to probiotics.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen commercials for those, or somebody recommended that I take those or that my child take those. How you just explained things and talked about it, talked a lot about food, which I think is super important. What, as a gastroenterologist, when you're talking with patients about these things, what roles do you feel like food plays? What role do you feel like probiotics play? What are some of the starting points or the things that you think are most important? If for the parents listening, they say, okay, what are some things that I can do to support my child's gut to be able to create a healthy microbiome? Where do you think those pieces fit in?
I think that's a great question. Probiotics come up all the time. Like that is probably the most common word comes out of my mouth in my practice. Probiotic. But one of the key things that I tell everybody is that you cannot probiotic your way into health.
Mm-hmm.
You can't use the probiotic as an excuse to eat pizza and burgers all day long. That doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So you have to create, if you want the probiotics to work the best for you, you have to create an environment by which that might occur.
Mm.
It's more as a supplement or an additive. Sometimes they have therapeutic benefits as well. So if you need it for a particular reason, like you have leaky gut or there's a lot of inflammation going on, then they can maybe help, kind of push you in the right direction. But still, at the same time, if you're doing everything else that is not ideal, the probiotic alone isn't going to get you there.
Mm-hmm.
So, nutrition plays obviously a large role because we're talking about the gut, and gut, processes all the nutrition. But, other things like making sure that they're just getting enough sleep, particularly for kids are very sensitive. At least mine are. If they don't get enough sleep,
Yes.
make sure they get enough sleep, make sure, they're fed and they're fed well. Make sure that, you learn and understand stress reduction. Even at a very young age, it's actually best if they learn how to do yoga and meditate and all those kind of things when they're little, because these are the habits that are easily ingrained that they could take with them their entire life and help them become more resilient people later on. Being out in nature, kids love to play. Every kid loves to play.
Yep.
So being outdoors in nature and learning and appreciating nature, and just spending as much time as you can out there, that's another good way to kind of optimize health. Plus, you're probably getting exercise, especially as a kid running around outside.
Mm-hmm.
And exercise is also very important. So exercise isn't just for adults. Exercise can be for kids. Doesn't mean they have to go work out in a gym and lift weights or anything, but running around on the playground is exercise for a kid.
Right. And they need that. And that, people often think about that just from the behavioral standpoint of, it helps them burn off energy. But actually, from the standpoint of physical health and our gut working properly and our brain working properly, we need movement. Kids need movement and sleep and all of those things. So talk a bit about what do you think are some good starting points? So for a family maybe who is eating a pretty processed food heavy diet, lots of packaged things. They're hearing you talk about, the dyes and those kinds of things. And they're especially, certain times of the year, we're heading into the holidays, things like that. And, there's a lot more of that stuff around. What do you think are some good basic starting points for families to think about with some of that? And maybe some things that don't increase a ton of stress. Because that's another thing that I find is parents go, I know I'm supposed to be doing all of these things, but I'm completely panicked and stressed out thinking about it. And it's like, well, that's not helpful either, right? So finding some starting points that parents and that family can actually start to reduce their stress while improving their health, I think is so important.
I think there's two easy kind of concepts. One is I tell people if it comes in a bag or a box, it means it was made in a factory. It was made in a factory. Then it was not made to make you healthy. It was made to make money. And so just understanding that concept and kind of letting that sink in, that's pretty key, because that helps you understand that if you're buying something that is packaged, then there are multiple ingredients, and most likely there are stabilizers and other things that are not really necessary for health, and they're just made to preserve the product on the shelf, not for your health, but so that they can sell more, because they don't want to sell you a box of cereal that's going to go stale in 2 days. They want it to last weeks on the shelf because somebody has to buy it eventually. And so understanding that concept, and then the kind of a complement to that concept is just start looking at the labels. You know, if you look at a label and you don't know what half the stuff is, then you should think twice about it. I mean, I don't know the names of all of these things. I mean, and it's kind of weird. And you start looking these things up and you're like, geez, why do I need to eat that for? You know? Like, you know, so if you don't know what the name is, you know, then maybe it's not for you. They actually say, you know, there's one tip I heard a few years ago is like, if your grandmother didn't know what this thing was, then don't eat it.
That's right. It's probably a safe bet. If you wouldn't, you know, sometimes I say to people, if you wouldn't cook with this in your kitchen, if this isn't something you have, you know, in your pantry, then it's probably not a normal thing to be eating. I know that you talk with patients a lot about cooking more at home, doing more, you know, shopping and food prep at home. And, you know, you and I talked about that can be a barrier for some people too, especially if they're not used to it. Like where do you start? And I'm a big proponent of families, you know, cooking and shopping together, involving kids in that. What are some of the tips that you have found are helpful for, you know, your patients around just starting to make some shifts in that area, things that maybe make meal prep easier or less stressful?
Yeah, you know, and getting the kids on board is actually kind of fun too, you know. If you have multiple kids, it might be a challenge to take all the kids to the grocery store at one time. So, you know, sometimes I just take one of them, you know, one of them at a time. We rotate them. You know, and have them pick out which vegetables and fruits look good, you know, have them bag it. So they kind of get through the whole process of looking at what the good foods are and picking them up. And then, you know, spending time together as a family, you know, once a week on the weekend to actually prep the food can be very, you know, helpful in many different levels. One, you have an activity that everybody's doing together. And two, you're, you know, getting the food ready for the week. So you're kind of doing work as well. And, you know, the kids aren't going to be doing like all the work as long as they do something, you know, even if it's like, hey, you know, let me chop this carrot and smell the organic carrot as it's being freshly cut. It is different, you know, and almost 100% of the time when you have a vegetable that they have not eaten before and they're part of the process of either washing it or peeling it or chopping it, they'll say, let me try it. I want to try it. And then, you know, you can tell them, you know, what I used to do is I just, you know, I'll Google carrot and I'll get a whole list of like all the vitamins and minerals and everything like that. And I'll show them the picture. I'll show them how it grows in the ground. And I'll say, look at all the vitamins that you're getting when you just eat this carrot. You're getting this, and this. And then I'll tell them, when you have these ingredients inside your body can do this, and this. And they're like, whoa, you know, and I say, you don't have to take your vitamins, you know, if you eat enough of these things. So this is your vitamin. This is where it's coming from. So, you know, it really kind of changes their mindset, and then they want to do that. And it really, even for the adults, you kind of, maybe sounds kind of cheesy, but you kind of bond with the food a little bit when you spend the time to actually chop it up and wash it and prepare it and get it ready. Because, the smells of the freshly cut vegetables, just the whole process of doing that makes you really kind of appreciate the food, as opposed to just, taking the plastic wrapper off and dumping it in the microwave and pushing 3 minutes and you're done. It's a totally different type of thing. And, it really, really makes an impact on how you, look at food to begin with. And it is effort. It takes time. But if you kind of work it out so that, you go grocery shopping on Saturday and then maybe don't worry about anything after that. And then Sunday, the next day, you get all the Pyrex out, you get all the cutting boards out, get it all set up, maybe even Saturday night before you go to bed, so you don't have to do that on Sunday. You wake up and, you wash everything, and it's just kind of like a little factory in your house. You chop, put them all in the Pyrex containers, and then, load them up in your fridge. And, it's kind of cool looking when you open up your fridge and all you see is like glass containers going all the way down with all the different vegetables. Because it'll, it's about 2 hours is what I kind of estimated when I did for a family of 4. And, you get pretty much almost a whole week worth of prep out of that 2 hours. So it's 2 hours on one day, but there's not much to do the rest of the week. You can even pre-cook meats if you want, if you eat meats and things like that. And so if you want to make a salad, just boom, 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 it takes 2 minutes to make a salad. You want to prepare a dish, you have the broccoli and the cauliflower and the Brussels sprouts are already chopped up and ready to go. That's the hard part. If you have to do that after work, when the kids are coming back from school or daycare or whatever, then you have to do all that stuff. You're like, who's going to cook these gourmet meals, right? Because it's like, we say it's gourmet because it's like takes a lot of effort to make it. But if it's already prepared for you, then, just it's a matter of throwing it on the pan with a little bit of some salt and let it cook. And, these things don't take a lot of gourmet effort to make.
Right. And I think that's such an important concept of just, it's sort of redistributing our time, right? Because the reality is, how much time are people spending driving to and from, fast food places, sitting in line, all of that. It's like, it's just redistributing that and planning ahead a little bit and saying, okay, we're going to do this. And I love families doing that together, because you get such great mileage out of that. Not just, as you said, the food prep, but also, you mentioned the togetherness and the bonding that can happen and the communication that can happen, with families and kids doing that stuff together. And I always say to people, if you make it more convenient to eat healthy, then you'll do it. So I love that, you open the fridge, you've got all your Pyrex containers with everything. Kids and adults are more likely than during the week to grab the kinds of things that are going to help them have a healthy gut microbiome and feel better, because it's all there and it's ready. And so I think those are such practical suggestions. One of the things I really appreciate that you talk a lot with patients about too is specific stress reducing kinds of strategies. And, not that people need to be sitting and meditating for hours a day, because actually that's not practical. And, most people aren't going to do that. But I know you've got some just even like simple, brief daily routines or things that you find are helpful for patients. Can you share what one or two of those that you think are particularly helpful for people, maybe even as a starting point?
Yeah, as a starting point, I think just breath work is one of the easiest things to do, because it requires very little training or understanding. There's no sort of, belief system involved in it. All you're doing is just breathing. You got to breathe every minute of the day anyway, so you might as well do it in a controlled fashion that can be relaxing. And so I like, one of the early breaths to try is called a 4-7-8 breath. So it's where you breathe in to a count of 4 with your nose, hold all the air in your belly to a count of 7, and then you exhale through your mouth to a count of 8. So it's 4, 7, 8. So you're breathing in, and then you're holding it in your belly, not in your chest, and you're blowing it out. And it's almost like you're doing like a sigh, because it's more exhalation than you're inhaling. When you do that, start at 4 times, at a time, and you can increase to 8 times. And then after that, I just ask people, that takes like 60 to 90 seconds. So you're not
Mm-hmm.
spending a lot of time. And then I ask them to just kind of sit there quietly and just breathe in and out through their nose. And all they're doing is watching their breath. They're observing their breath. They're following their breath. You might get distracted, but that's okay. Just gently bring your mind back to the breath and sit there for as long as you feel comfortable, whether it's a minute, if you, do 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I mean, if you do, up to 20, 25 minutes, that's even better. That's a little bit hard to do in the beginning. So, just do your eight breath cycles and sit there for another minute and just kind of appreciate what it feels like to be calm and still. And that's what we mean by being grounded. That means that you are centered. You are really just focused on you and the breath and being alive and being a part of the whole environment that you're in. And then, just slowly open your eyes and get ready to start the day. And you can wind down the day that way too. You can teach the kids this because it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
And so that's one easy thing. The other thing you can do is I have a mantra that I wrote for the kids actually, but I tell a lot of the adults to do that too. It's just kind of like you're setting the intention in the beginning of the day, and you can use the same thing at the end of the day. So it's almost like a poem, or you can write your own. May this day be of benefit. May I help someone today. May I, not let minor things bother me. I'm just doing this off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of things that you do and you say. You have it, on the mirror in your bathroom, and the whole family can do it one by one, or you can do it together, or however you want to do it. And you're just kind of setting the intention for the day. And it sounds silly, and it may feel silly in the beginning, but that's okay, because that's the normal feeling to feel, because I'm just standing here repeating these words. But you do it enough times over and over again, those words become ingrained in your being. That's kind of who you become and how you feel. You're kind of reprogramming how your mind thinks. And so you may say, may this day be of benefit, and you may have a bad day, the 5 minutes later. And that's okay, because, it's not like some magic that you're putting a spell on yourself that you're going to have a great day. Life happens, but you keep saying that to yourself over and over and over again. One day you're going to start seeing that I could have had a bad day if XYZ happened after this event happened, but it didn't, because this is how I reacted instead. And so there's the hidden benefit. It actually works in the background.
And such a powerful strategy for parents, because especially parents who are raising challenging children, it's easy to get so caught up, in what's going on with kids, and then beating ourselves up over our reactions to them. And so what I love about those two strategies is it gives parents even something they can do, even as a quick reset in the middle of the day. If you find yourself getting really overwhelmed with something that's going on with your child, or if you feel like you're really, losing it over what's happening, just that simple 90-second, breathing and just sitting as a recentering, and sort of that setting a mantra or an intention around how you want to be with your kids, and just centering yourself with that. I think those are such powerful, they're very simple, but they're powerful strategies that parents can use.
Yeah, these are the things that you don't want to try to learn when you're in the heat of it. Right. You want to learn it when things are not in the heat of it, because when those situations happen, when it's a tough day, it's like you're calling it to action. You're activating that part of your mind and your body. And so, even if you take one deep breath in and one deep breath out in the middle of a heated situation, that in and of itself might be enough to kind of cue in the brain. Bring you back to that point where you're in that 4-7-8 breath when you're sitting calmly by yourself. It'll bring you that sense of calmness.
Yeah, and it has not only an impact on just our mental well-being in the moment, but also on our physical health too, because that chronic stress, being in that chronically overactivated state, is really, really bad for every organ system and just, our entire physical health. So even those simple tools, they not only help us in the moment with how we're thinking and feeling, but they really are important for supporting our overall physical health as well, right?
Yeah, the microbiome very much adapts to this change as well. mean, even stress, when you have all the stress hormones released in the gut, can actually cause the microbes in the gut to change. So a guy that's a good guy might actually end up becoming a bad guy because you were stressed out. So, and this is where chronic inflammation comes from. This is one of the root causes is stress. And it sounds like such a simple concept, but it is a simple concept, but what happens inside is very complex actually.
Yeah.
And so this affects your microbiome. If it's affecting your microbiome, it's going to affect the metabolites that we talked about, all the things that are produced as a result. And even epigenetic expression can be changed. Your genes may work and adapt differently because the chemicals that are being produced in your body as a result of that stress impact cause other chemical reactions to occur. And before you know it, you're angry and you're, road raging on the way to work after something happened in the morning and you don't really know why, but that's why.
Yeah.
It came from somewhere.
So important, the connections with all that. You've shared such great information and tips, and it's been such a wonderful conversation. I know you have patients that you need to get to for the rest of the day. I want to make sure that people know where they can find out more information about you and what you're doing. What's the best place for them to go online for that?
Yeah, I have a website, it's precisionclinic.com, so www.precision, it's precision with an E, clinic.com. And I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and, all the social media places, at Precision Clinic, or at Dr. Marvin Singh. And there's plenty of information there. I have another website that has all my videos and blogs and stuff, and that's drmarvinsingh.com as well. So
great.
Plenty of places to find me.
Yeah. And we'll have all of those links and the social media links and everything in the show notes. And I really do encourage all of you listening to go and check out those resources. Dr. Singh's got a wide variety of videos and articles and things available, as well as just some really cool and helpful stuff that you post as well on the various social media sites. So great resources there. Dr. Singh, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It was fun.
And thanks to all of you for listening to this episode. We'll see you next time back here on the Better Behavior Show.
Thank you for listening to the Better Behavior Show with Dr. Nicole Beurkens. Leave a review on iTunes and share this episode with your friends. Visit drbeurkens.com to ask any questions for an upcoming episode, post comments for today's show, and sign up to receive weekly updates. That's drbeurkens.com.